Hello, and this is the first garden tour for 2023. I missed May, which is typically a time that I do like to do a garden tour, but it is now mid-June, but I figured this was a good time to show you the garden. There's still quite a bit of color that is transitioning from spring into some of the mid to late spring and then into summer blooms. So the first are these two catmints, which are looking fabulous. They are sort of towards the end of their blooming season. I have stopped cutting them back. I don't feel like they really flush with great growth or a second flush of blooms. So I just let them be until they're fully done. And I do have some stems here that are dead, and I don't know quite what happened to them. So I guess I'll have to absolutely clean those out. Over here, I have interspersed around the garden some bee balm, and it does self-sow itself everywhere, but it's easy to pull out and just keep it where I want to. So that is budding up. The pink fuchsia flowers are rose campion. Over here, for some reason, they're kind of not as clumped together and really tight bunched, but it's looking very pretty and airy over here. Back here, I have some coneflower that I don't recall, but I guess I transplanted it over, and it's getting nice and tall and budding up. Over here, I have some delphinium, which is pretty much done flowering, but they put out some side shoots and some flowers. That looked really spectacular when it was just all in bloom up and down. It looked absolutely beautiful. This delphinium here is still looking quite beautiful, and the flowers are almost all the way up and down, but you can see where the flowers have started to die off, and it's just looking absolutely gorgeous. This is the first year that this one has gotten so tall and just absolutely beautiful. So every year I think they'll probably put on a little more flowers and look even more beautiful. Over here, this budding here is the sea holly. And one of the things that I found with the sea holly is they are very pinchy, for one. For two, they do self-seed quite readily. So I'm going to be sure to cut these once they are fully done flowering, because this one is the one I did not cut last year, and I have a ton of those plants over here. I had to pull out several of them, and matter of fact, one of them decided to grow over here, and I just sort of let it be. One of the things my gardens is struggling with is lots and lots of aphids. I saw a ladybug here the other day, and it was taking care of the aphids. There's not as many here anymore, so good job. I moved my sedum autumn joy back here because the rabbits were eating it. I just figured maybe it was the deer, but regardless, it's done much better over here. I also moved this from somewhere else. This is a very short variety of daisy. It's a snow-capped daisy, lots of buds on it, so it'll be flowering very soon. This lavender here I winter sowed a few years back. It was one of my first winter sowings, and I believe I put 3 plants in here, and it's just this gigantic shrub now and looks absolutely beautiful. I do believe this is all English lavender, so technically I don't really need to grow more for me to use in a tea, but I kind of wanted to be sure that it didn't get mixed in with anything that is being the lawn that's being fertilized and treated and things like that. So in my veggie garden, I stay away from all those things. So I will want to have a separate plant for that. Now this one can be good for maybe just drying it and having just for the fragrance, would be nice to harvest from here. Now this snapdragon here is one that I purchased at Walmart, and it overwintered last year, and then it overwintered again. Last year I barely got to see the flowers because they were being eaten up. I also had a lot of coneflowers near here, which I have now transplanted, and they've been doing so beautiful. And I don't normally like red, but I love how striking this plant is in the garden and really stands out. I also transplanted a lot of my Veronica that I just had all over the garden. It struggled for a little bit, but this year it is doing beautiful. I am hoping that nothing's going to eat it, but these have some gorgeous bright pink blooms. So this year might be the year that it finally puts on some blooms and I get some color in these. So I kind of added them all together here. They were one really large plant that died in the middle, and so I had divided it out, and then it struggled for a while. But I think I have found the place it likes, and planted it a little bit more above ground than I think it was a little too sunk in, and now it is doing significantly better. Again, looking forward to these flowers. The yarrow has gone out of control. Typically, I have deer and rabbit who munch on it, which I do see that there may have been quite a bit of browsing done right around here. I just see lots and lots of stems. I did not touch these. These were not done by me. But there's still, some buds forming in the back. So if they don't get eaten by deer or rabbit, then these will likely bloom. I do see that they're quite infested with aphids. This year, that is quite a problem in my garden. I don't know if it was because it was the very warm winter, possibly lack of rain that we've had. We haven't had rain. We just recently got 2 days of rain, which has been so wonderful. But we had not had rain for over a month, I think, or at least anything significant. For the month of May, I think we only got a 1/4 inch for the entire month, and that's not like for our area. We usually get about 1.5 inches for all of May. It's usually a wetter season. But we'll see. This yarrow does have to move from here next year because it is just growing out of control, for one, and two, it's just really it's a tall plant, and it's under this tree, and it's I just think it's too close to it. I need something a little shorter over here. So like something like the Veronica would go great over here. So I have to think about what I want to plant over here next year, and then move this yarrow to another part of the yard. So as you can see, this purple Veronica does so beautifully every year. Just absolutely love the color on this and love the green tips on it. This one does rebloom for me. Every time I cut it back, it will bloom back again. So usually I wait a little longer until sort of these are more brown, and up the stem they get longer and just turn really brown. So that's when I cut it back, and then I will get lots of blooms. You see here, these are all new right there. So sometimes it gets a little difficult having to cut them if you don't want to cut some of the new blooms that are coming out. And over here I have the Millennium Alliums, which are starting to bud up. And I think these usually bloom around early July, I want to say. So they're getting close to actually going to bloom within probably the next month or so. Over here's another coneflower that is well hidden between this bee balm and some grass here, which is the little blue stem, one of my favorite grasses. And I love the fact that this coneflower can just be here without disturbance of deer and rabbit so far, and just grow happily in between plants that the deer or rabbit don't like, including the alliums. So I hope that that will be the case for most years, and it will continue to do that. There's still risk that maybe the deer could come and eat the buds. Over here I have some Agastaki, and this is stuff that I winter sowed last year. I had it all over my yard. I transplanted a few of them here. I have both white and purple. They are a little behind because I transplanted them and then I cut them back by half. So they're not as established and going to bloom as quickly as if they had been here from the start of the spring. This one over here, which is the purple one, I think is some of the stronger variety. And this one's doing pretty nice and probably going to set bloom soon. But I have some back here, which will likely, I'm seeing already it budding out and will definitely start blooming and putting out longer blooms. It'll just get bigger and bigger, and it'll look absolutely beautiful. Back here, this is the black-eyed Susan, and hopefully it's getting enough sun because it's getting sort of shaded out, but everything is sort of caged up, and hopefully it'll do okay. Every year I think it's getting a little bigger, and it might outgrow this cage. I was going to move this Agastaki this year, but time got away from me and may have to do that next year. I had added a bunch of allium bulbs, and those were doing so beautifully this spring, and unfortunately I did not capture that in video, but it was so beautiful to have that early color in this bed, as well as the peonies. They did absolutely beautifully this year as well. Over here I have a St. John's wort, and it's a shorter variety, and there are tons and tons of buds on it this year, doing much better than last year. And I do have to actually spray it with the deer spray tonight, because usually the deer have eaten the buds off of this, even though it is a deer resistant plant. So I do want to try and see if I can actually have blooms in this year. And over here I have Rudbeckia Cherry Brandy. Last year I had protected it, and this year it seems to be so far holding up from any kind of deer pressure. But I might be eating my words, because the deer may just come around tonight and then just decimate my garden. You never know. But I will probably just be spraying certain plants with deer spray to try and protect them. In this section here, which is all caged up because the rabbits were actually eating these, are all coneflowers. I think these are mostly the green twister coneflowers, and then I've added some that I winter sowed down at the bottom, which is the yellow variety, and I also have those protected in the little black waste baskets, just protecting them until they get established, and then have to figure out how I'm going to just protect this whole area here. Over here is some irises. Actually, these were on the side of the road. Someone had put them out saying free, and I decided to stop, and I grabbed a few of the bulbs, at least the ones that looked the best to me. I'm not familiar with irises, and I'm assuming that this is possibly the more common type of iris. And I thought, why not? Give it a try. And they really have established beautifully over here. So they seem to really like this spot. And I'm so looking forward to seeing some of these flowers next year. These are some feverfew that I had winter sown last year, and they actually overwintered. So I transplanted them over here. And so far, nothing seems to bother them, not the deer or the rabbit. So I'm very happy about that, adding some nice pops of yellow in the garden, and may have to consider whether or not I actually grow a few more just to add sort of as a border over here or somewhere around the garden. I have all my dahlias back here. So I've got 2 Arabian Nights, 2 Thomas Edisons, and 2 of the Penhill watermelons. This might be my last year for Penhill watermelons. I think I'm just going to give up on those. And I'm not 100% sure that I'm going to also dig out these other dahlias. I may just treat them like annuals and then just buy new dahlias every year and just try a different variety. And I really only think I want to grow about 3 different dahlia plants. Well, not different dahlia plants, but 3 tubers. And then use this space for some more of like zinnias and cosmos, which I actually am planning on maybe doing some cosmos in this corner here. And then over here, I've got Dara that overwintered or self-seeded or both. And this one, I'm going to let it bloom, and eventually I'll pull this out once it's done sort of, and it's not looking as great. It's going to come out, and then I'm going to put zinnias here this year, because I grew a few zinnias over here last year and I really loved having them over here. I'll probably put maybe the Oklahoma variety, which is a little shorter, and I'll fill this in area as well. Over here is my winter sown little strip here, and this has strawflower, some scabiosa, snapdragons, and just a couple of gomphrenias that I added down in that back little corner. Now this is a back corner of my house, and the deer do like to come through here, so we do have it netted up with some deer fencing. So it may not look quite as beautiful without having all the fencing around. The coral bells are all in cages because the rabbits will absolutely eat these. At least I think it's the rabbits. They're usually the ones that have the wider palate. So those will remain caged up. I did plant some ajuga here. These are, I bought a really large plant and then I separated them out. And a lot of it seemed to have died over the winter, but now they seem to be making quite a comeback. And I'm very happy to see a lot of growth, and I'm sure that these will spread throughout the garden, and then I can just add them to other places. I transplanted more of the snow-capped daisies over here, and they took to the transplant super well. I think next year I may have to give some away. I have them all over the place, and I really would just like room for other plants. The hydrangea, this is the Twist and Shout variety. It's a lace cap hydrangea. All my hydrangeas, I don't know what happened this past season and winter, but every single one of the prior year stems just died back and didn't have any growth on them. So everything on here is all new growth. Luckily, these do bloom on old and new wood, so I will get some blooms, but it just may not be quite as profuse as if I had both the old and the new growth on the plant. The rose campion took very well here, and back there you see some foxgloves that are just about mostly done, and those just did super well back there. I've added some new seedlings back there so that they can establish and then bloom next year. Back there, that pink one is my favorite variety of foxglove. I believe that's the Apricot Beauty, and that's definitely my top favorite of all the foxgloves. So getting in for a closer look, this is the red twig dogwood, and this is the variegated variety, and it is stunning this year. So we had to protect it with chicken wire because we later came to find that it is a plant that both the deer and the rabbit love to eat, both the leaves and in the winter the stems. So since we just planted it last year, we wanted to give it some time to get established. And it is starting to outgrow sort of this chicken wire. So eventually, I don't know what we're going to do, but it's going to have to come out of the chicken wire. And we'll see how it does. But yeah, this is an absolutely gorgeous shrub, and it's supposed to get very large. I believe it's supposed to get somewhere around, I don't know, 5-6 feet tall and 10 feet wide, which is what we wanted to sort of fill in this space here. Of course, I don't know what I will do because then that might take up some of the room that I have my foxgloves in at the moment, but maybe I'll do foxgloves instead of the rose campions. I also have quite a bit of astilbe in this garden here, and those are all budded up here. These I think are the Sunny Boy, which I did add a few more bare roots earlier this spring. So this astilbe here, I did divide this spring. And I don't know if that's why it's a little late in sort of developing some buds. But the one back here, which is the same one, because it's the second half of that one, is doing a little bit better. So I don't know what the difference is between the two and why. And then I have this astilbe back here, which is one of my favorite ones. And it's one that is kind of more arching stems and blooms and a very, very light pink, and it's super beautiful. Now this one I think can stand to be divided. In the early spring you could kind of see how it was starting to look a little bit like a dead center, and usually that's an indication that you want to divide something. These are columbines. These are all winter sown, and they did flower beautifully. Lots of aphids on them, and so I cut them all back. I do still like the foliage of it, and then that usually does well. They do get browsed by, I believe it is the rabbit. I don't think it's the deer. So far they've left it alone, but eventually they might come around and start devouring it. I don't mind too much. They do put on quite a bit of growth, and they'll just, leaf back out. So here's a little bit of a different view or different angle without the fencing. And I do feel like this garden is looking absolutely beautiful. It's really just looking very lush this year, and I'm liking just the variety of color in this section of my garden. So thanks for joining me on this garden tour. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that like button, and I'll see you next time. Bye.